Good morning and welcome to Chapter 9. It's great to be back in my office. You're not going to see all these videos in my office, but some of them are actually going to be here. Anyway, I hope you're enjoying this class. We're halfway through now. This is Chapter 9 we're going to talk about today, which is we're looking at cognitive development in childhood in the in the play years. Years about after 2 years old, and maybe up through five. Maybe your textbook says 3 to 6, and that's pretty good. As far as cognitively, remember that we're looking at development first from a stage perspective, which means that we're looking at how is it that we reason at certain ages. And consequently, toward that end, we're looking at how are we interacting with the world around us? How do we adapt to our learning? We're taking Piaget's perspective, which means, first of all, we're looking at what are we thinking, and then adapting to our environment, adapting our thinking to our environment. We're still using that assimilation and accommodation that we talked about a few chapters ago. This stage that we're looking at in the play years is what we call pre-operational thinking. Pre-operation. The operation part of that is mental operation. Um, what is a mental operation? It's simply we're doing something within our minds. You may think that you always have to do hands-on, but you actually don't have to do hands-on. There's most of your life you live up here inside your mind. There's nothing wrong with it. That's a good thing. So we kind of cover two things. First of all, we cover symbolism. Second, we're going to cover intuition in this pre-operational stage, which means, first of all, what is symbolism? We have to start to see how we represent things in the world through symbols. Okay, so if I say the word cat to you, cat, it's really just three sounds, three phonemes, cat, but I put them together, cat. Now you have an image in your head. You don't just have an image that you see, you probably can hear the sound of the purring or the screeching or whatever. You can probably also maybe smell the cat box or smell something. So we have all this sensation. Now, this is only up here, unless you're in a room with a cat. I'm not in a room with a cat. Thank God I'm in my office, away from the cat. But there is no cat here. There is a cat here. That's a mental operation. So I've taken three sounds, and suddenly there is this experience in my mind. That's symbol. That's called symbolism. The second part of this is intuition. So what we're doing with intuition is now we take this symbol and we do something with it. Okay, it means something, and I think maybe the best way to think about intuition is through sort of like an emotional response. How do we interact with the world? Well, we interact with it symbolically. Um, there are no trees in this room, but for me, I'm always thinking about trees. I hear them, I smell them, I see them in my mind. Not always, but see, so there's something about that I can symbolically represent, but then I can intuit, that is a verb, intuit, think about it, and do something with those thoughts. Um, we're going to add to Piaget, we're going to also add another theory. This is the Russian psychologist Lev Vygotsky. I think we talked a little bit about Vygotsky before. Really essential to Vygotsky is in what he contributed to our understanding of how children learn is he bringing in a social and a cultural aspect to this, that we're learning not just from our interactions with the world, but we learn also through our interactions with other people. There's an element to this. Each of us decides at some point, I don't know if that's the right word, decides, but there is there's an established relationship we have with each person that is we establish it sort of, and we're looking at that person as being our model. Okay, this leads us to eventually a point where we can sit in a classroom and have somebody teach us. There is a certain amount of trust. We look into that person to show us how things are done, to scaffold us. If you've ever watched a building being built, you build it from the ground up and you add to it. That's called scaffolding. So for us to learn something, we learn the basics. Um, think about the way you learn to tie your shoes, or maybe you've taught somebody else how to tie their shoes. And so you take that, you show on them, so you do it and they watch. And then on top of that, you add, okay, now I'm going to take your hands and show you the way to move your hands. And then they do it and you watch. And then eventually that person, that child is doing it on their own and you don't watch. You just, might require them to just get it done. And that's called scaffolding. And so you wouldn't just take this 2-year-old and say, tie your shoes and figure it out on your own. You show them how to do it. Now, some people don't have that. Consequently to this idea of learning, both Piaget's idea of learning, which is learning through experience, and Vygotsky's learning, which is through human interaction, we're also concerned about probably two aspects of what do we do with our minds. First of all is attention. 2, 3, 4 years old is where we're really mastering this idea of what we'll call attention, selective attention, where we decide, what are we looking at? What are we paying attention to? As infants, we were doing this. And it's almost automatic, because especially you have to look at people's faces in order to learn about communication. And now we're learning more and more. We're just watching people and watching the cat maybe, and watching the trees and all this to learn about these things. So we have to pay attention. We're probably more pay attention to things that are new than we pay attention to the stuff that doesn't seem to change. Second part of this, so we have attention. We also are going to start to develop something called memory, and so we're really learning how to use our minds. What is this hardware? What software can we put in this hardware, and what can we do with it? How is it that we remember? There isn't really, at this age, there isn't like really one technique that works for everybody, and yet we would expect most children to remember how to walk, how to run, how to climb trees. Maybe if you're climbing trees, all that kind of stuff, you remember. Probably you're doing it so much that it becomes automatic, like tying your shoes. All right, something else is something called executive function. We're noticing in children the importance of controlling, well, maybe that's really part of attention, but controlling what are we doing with our minds. Soon the children will be in school, and one of the most important things in school is to be controlled, self-control, sit still, don't talk when the teacher's talking, that kind of thing. All of that is called executive function. Can you control your mind? Can you control your thinking? Can you control that kind of stuff? Okay. Finally, another aspect of development here, cognitive development, is your theory of mind. Our theories of mind are continuing to develop here. We talked a little bit about it being mostly self-awareness. So now we're looking at that self-awareness in terms of, I understand here what's going on. Now I can understand what's going on in your mind and know that those are two different minds and they can be doing two different things. So if you take a child who's too young, who hasn't really developed that theory of mind, what's going on in that child's mind is what that child is assuming that is going on in everyone else's mind. So if you know, you bring the child in and you show them the box of animal crackers, that circus wagon box of animal crackers, and you say, "What's in the box?" And the child says, uh, "Animal crackers." And you open it up and they're crayons. And the child goes, "Wow, they're crayons." Then you ask that child, "Hey, what would happen if I brought your friend in and your friend was looking in the box? What would your friend say is in the box?" And the child might say, "Crayons. Why? Because I know there are crayons in the box." Now, see what the assumption is there, because I know it in my mind that everybody knows in their mind now. Okay. That's immature theory of mind. A mature theory of mind is, well, I got fooled, you can be fooled too, and my friend would say they're animal crackers. Okay, let's go to one more aspect, or two more aspects in this chapter you're going to cover. First of all, this language. We're continuing to develop language. We already have the rudiments of it. We already know how to listen to other people, how to try out the sounds that we're hearing. Other people go, "Oh yeah, oh I understand you," or answer your questions or whatever, or they say, and then you change the way you speak so they understand you. But now we're to a point where language learning is mostly learning all these new words for things. We have in our vocabulary over 1 million words, just in the English language. Where do we learn them all? We don't learn them all. Most people probably only know maybe 40,000 of them, which isn't 40,000 is like 4%. So 4%, 4 out of 100 words. Okay, so as a child, though, we probably by year one, our first year, we might know 2 or 3 words. By year two, we probably know 500 words. By year three, we probably know 10,000 words. So there is exponential growth going on here. I would say, if I had to summarize what your textbook says real quick, just to introduce, look at the aspect of practice. The more you use it, the easier it is to learn it. Okay. Now let's go one step further and cover the last thing that the book talks about is schooling. And here's the question: is it good for children to be in preschool situations, early childhood situations? Um, Years ago, most children were raised at home. Uh, Now, I think a lot of people, maybe most people, things, I don't know most people, so I wouldn't really know. But I think a lot of people do believe that children would be behind if they weren't preschooled. Um, and so that's a question. I'm not really going to pass judgment one way or the other. That's a question you should consider. I will tell you, literature, that's research, about 20 years ago said that children who were preschooled versus children who were raised in a home, the difference is when they start school, the preschool children are sharper cognitively, and the home raised children were sharper behaviorally, socially. Okay, so preschool helps cognitive development more, and um, and being raised around the people, your caregivers and your parents, would benefit you more socially. Now, that was 20 years ago. Nowadays, we don't see those same differences. We take into account that some homes, people don't talk to their children, um, and a lot of homes they do. Uh, Preschool situations is a lot of variety of those different situations. And in fact, this is a question in your chapter. Look at what is it that goes into a really good early childhood program, and we'll look and discuss some of that as we go along. Anyway, I hope you have a great week. It's good to see you again. Boy, I talked a long time this time, but you have a great week, and I'll see you next time for chapter 10.